Born into a crime family, Ron Isherwood shot his first man at 16 years old, and it only got worse from there. Even in recovery, he couldn't resist the allure of crime until he ended up in front of a judge looking at an 18-year bit. Today, he's here with us to share his journey and what he's learned along the way. But before we bring him in, here's a peek at what you're going to get.
I was born into a criminal family. Everything that wasn't normal was normal for our family. Crime, violence, drugs. By the early mid-70s, I was really into smuggling, into crime, into violence, and I was part of an organised crime family. And they kicked me out of the family because I was a heroin addict. And heroin addicts are weak people. They tell on people, that's the old belief system it used to have. So I just went full on into my own world of drug addiction. All my friends were drug addicts. All my friends were drug smugglers. All my friends were criminals. And jail became my home.
All right, what's going on, everybody? That was tonight's guest, Ron Isherwood. Let's not waste any time. Get him in here. What's up, Ron?
Yeah, hi, man. How you doing, buddy?
Is there anything that you'd like to say before we get started tonight?
Not really. Just that my life's is about recovery today. Everything I do is based around recovery. I'm obsessive and compulsive in my behavior, and I'm obsessive and compulsive in carrying a message of recovery. And I love what you're doing. I love being able to get on social media and use it as a platform to help people. My motivation today is all about carrying a message that the life of crime is a lie crime. It's not a life, it's just a lie. We're caught up in it. Some of us are bred into it, and we believe it.
Well, having said that, let's not waste any time. Let's jump into it.
This is Hard Knox Talks.
Okay, before we really dive in, tonight, I'd just like to let you know that tonight's show is brought to you in part by Prairie Sky Recovery Centre, Saskatchewan's only private inpatient addictions treatment centre, located in Leipzig, Saskatchewan. Stronger Together Canada, peer-led support groups by Mums Stop the Harm, supporting those who struggle with a loved one's drug use or have tragically lost a loved one to drug-related harms. The Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan, reminding us that supportive living is cheaper than keeping people incarcerated. And the School of Public Health at the University of Saskatchewan, offering the Graduate Certificate Program in Substance Use, Health, and Wellbeing. To learn more about tonight's sponsors, check out our new merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are in the show notes below. That read is getting longer and longer.
That's a good thing.
Yes, I agree. A lot of really great organizations are supporting us. So we learned a little bit about you. You were born into a family of crime. Why don't we start there? How old were you when you first started to realize that perhaps your family was different from other families?
4 years of age.
Really?
At 4 years of age, I was in bed. We were very poor, like, I'm talking, it's 1958. And there was banging at our front door. My mum got out of bed, answered the door. The police came in with my father handcuffed, blood all over him. And as a little kid, 4-year-old kid, I sat up in bed and went like that. Bang, bang.
Wow.
The cops.
Do you remember this, or was this something was told to you?
I remember it.
Wow.
No, I remember it, and it was told to me. I remember it like it was yesterday. It had such a significant effect on my life, because my dad was, my dad was my hero, like all dads are heroes. And here's my dad handcuffed, bloodied, and then the cops completely ripped our house to pieces searching for something. And they took my dad away and took him to prison. But that was my first memory of my encounter with the police, and my first memory. We used to drive past police cars and my dad would go, "Look at them F and C's. Why don't they go and get a job, the filthy F and C?" Like just complete abuse, And you see a police car, you say, "That's the enemy. That's the enemy." And by the time I was 12 years of age, I was arrested for a major crime. Not, 12-year-old kids might break into a car I broke into a big factory like J.C. Penning's, but we have it in Australia called Coles. I broke into that on a Easter weekend. We were in a really poor suburb, and we broke in there, and I got all the street kids, and we all got in there. And we got new clothes. It was the first time most of us ever had new clothes in our lives. And we all had new clothes, and we ate all the chocolates and drank all the cordial, and we lived really high for 3 days.
And
then we
wait
got
a minute,
arrested
whoa,
on
hang
the
on.
third day.
So you spearheaded that?
Yeah, it was
at
my
12
deal,
years
yeah.
old.
Oh yeah, I'd been breaking into factories for many years before that.
So you must have had some sort of reputation by that time to have all of these people following you into these factories. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Well, the deal was with me. My dad was a crim. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew my dad was a gangster. Carried the gun and all that sort of stuff. Even though we're really poor, he still, he wore immaculate suits, handmade suits. Even the photos of me in that photo, I'm 14 years of age wearing a handmade suit with handmade shoes. So even at that age, that's how I dressed at 14 years of age. And my father dressed exactly the same. And so we broke into factories, and when we'd break into a factory, if it had a safe or a big strong room in it, I'd go home and tell my dad. Then he'd get his mates, and they'd go and break into it, and they'd get rewarded.
Wow!
For telling them which places had the safes and which places had the strong rooms, and I knew how to cut alarm systems at 12 years of age.
You shot a man at 16. Let's talk a little bit about that.
My dad. By this time, my dad had gone up the ranks and was fairly high. He had illegal gambling casinos, and we were in the casino, and an older guy who I'd become friends with, they were playing pool. It's going to sound really crazy, but it's the truth. And it was $1 a game. My mate won. The guy goes, double or nothing, that's $2. Double or nothing, that's $4. And then when he finished, he said to my mate, piss off. Long story short, the guy told him to piss off. I tell him he has to go downstairs and fight the guy. And I go to my dad and I go, this guy's not paying. I said, can I get your gun? He's got a gun hidden behind the counter. I take the 45 and I go downstairs, and these two guys start having a fight. And the other guy starts beating my mate up. So I hit him with the gun. He runs away, and he turns around and he says, I know where you live. I'm going to come back and kill you and your family. Because these guys aren't normal guys. These are all criminals, these are all gangster guys. So I go upstairs and I say to my dad, blah, blah, this is what happened. The guy beat up so-and-so. He's threatened to kill us. The old man goes, get in the car. We get in the car and I get the shotgun out, 12-gauge shotgun. We drive down the road and we find him and his mates walking down the road. And as we drive past, he puts his fingers out the car and he goes, at the window towards the car, and he goes, bang, bang, like that to me. And as he did that, I put the shotgun out and I shot him and his mate, both in the legs.
Whoa.
And my father abused me for only shooting him in the legs.
Really?
My father. Oh, yeah. He was angry.
He wasn't messing around.
Dead men don't tell tales.
Oh,
he said, now you've set yourself up. These guys can come back and get you. These guys can come back for revenge. He was actually really angry that I'd only wounded these guys. And, 6 months later, I was arrested with a shootout with the police, and the guy that I shot the guy for told on me. So I ended up getting arrested for those charges. I got arrested for those charges as well. So my dad was right in some ways. But, he was right, but he was wrong. Yeah.
What was it that kind of made you realize you needed a better way?
My dad hated two things in this world: drug addicts and tattoos. So it's not hard to see. See, my dad was a gangster and he was a horrible man, but he was my dad. And as a child, I thought I loved him and I thought I owed it to him, and I did horrible things for him, and I did things for his acknowledgement and, for his love and for his approval. Then when I went to prison in 1971, I got out in 1973. In prison, they put me on a drug called Largactil, which is a psychiatric drug, which I'm not a schizophrenic psychopath, but that's what they labelled me because they couldn't understand how a 17-year-old boy could be doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we had no understanding of drug addiction. So in 1974, I got out of prison and I started using intravenous heroin because I knew that would get me away from my father, because in the underworld, if you're a heroin user back in those days, you were a liability. So they just kicked you out of the gang sort of thing. And I started on my own merry way and started becoming a drug smuggler, getting involved with guys, because, you're a heroin addict. You don't want to be buying off the street.
Mm-hmm.
I was connected through the criminal world.
We always want to go straight to the source.
Man,
Mm-hmm.
who wants to be the middleman?
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to be the guy that bought it off the street?
Mm-hmm.
And when I started using heroin, I didn't know about a drug addiction. I didn't know anything about addiction. There was no recovery. There was no 12. There was AA in Australia, but there was no other. In 1977, I went to an AA meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and I just looked at it and I thought, oh well, these poor old people. I feel so sorry for them.
Because they can't drink?
Yeah, and because they were talking about falling off the stool drunk. I'd never had a job. At 27 years of age, I'd never had a job in my life. I'd never paid taxes. I'd never had a driver's license. I'd never had a passport. I'd never voted at 27 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
The only place I existed was on the prison and in the criminal justice system.
How'd you end up in an AA meeting?
I was in prison. I'd escaped from prison. I escaped from prison in 1979, and I started using a drug called Ritalin, which is amphetamine based.
Yeah.
And I'm a heroin addict. Anything with amphetamine in front of it, I go into psychosis immediately.
Yeah.
And I went into psychosis really badly, and I had a friend of mine cut a hole in I was an escapee from prison, so I should have been paranoid anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an escapee. I'm using Ritalin, trying to shoot dilaudid over the top of Ritalin, and I'm just completely crazy because I'd robbed a chemist and got all their drugs. And this guy, friend of mine that I'd used with, he was a plumber, had all this, tools. And I said, cut a hole in the floor. I'm surrounded, So he cut a hole in the floor, but he pissed off. He didn't cut the hole in the floor for me. He cut the hole in the floor and ran away because he knew I was crazy. So I got arrested. The next day.
Can I just jump in for one quick sec, Ron? When you say chemist, do you mean a pharmacy?
Pharmacy, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Chemist means something different over on this side of the pond.
Yeah. I realized that when I said it. Yeah, pharmacies in America. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I used to go and rob pharmacies.
Mm-hmm.
I'd go and break into the pharmacies because I've been doing safes since I was a little boy. So pharmacy safes were quite funny. They were a joke.
Yeah.
Like you could open them with a can opener. They were just pathetic.
Yeah. So how did you end up in an AA meeting?
An old guy, the guy that I kidnapped and I made him cut the hole, I went back to prison. He wrote me a letter. He said, if you put half as much effort into getting clean as you do getting stoned, you got this shit. And I'm in prison, right? And I'm like, I'll write back to him, yeah, thanks, man. He's in a rehab. And he's really smart. So he got 3 girls to write to me. Hi, my name's Donna. Hi, my name's Sandy. And girls are like, oh, I'm going to rehab. My motivation.
He capitalized on your defects of character.
Well, the girls where I were, I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying it. They were men. I was in prison. So any girl in the prison was a man. And that's, to each his own, but that's not me. So I'm thinking, okay, I can stay in prison and rot, or I can go to this rehab and find myself a new wife. Basically,
how'd that go?
I went to rehab, and I got twin 40-year-old daughters from that. Yeah, so it went okay. Mum and I didn't last, but I have beautiful daughters and beautiful grandchildren.
Do you still talk?
But that's what I got.
Do you still talk to that guy? The guy that talked you into rehab?
He never got clean.
Oh no, sorry to hear that.
Yeah. But he's okay. He's a functional alcoholic.
Okay.
He never got clean. And the fun is a lot of stories like that.
Yeah. So
people help other people.
Did you stay sober after that?
I stayed sober for 10 months. I left with that girl. It's a really funny story. And because that was my first attempt at recovery. I was 10 months sober, clean. I was bailed. To the rehab, so I wasn't allowed to leave the rehab. Otherwise, I went straight back to prison. So I chose to leave because I was in love and in lust. And about 5-6 days after leaving the rehab, we started using heroin again. And we dried out and we went back to a place called Canberra, which is the capital of Australia. And I met up with a buddy of mine and he said to me, "I just have a couple of beers, man. You know, you got this under control." And that was in 1982. It was the last time I drank beer. I had 2 beers, a couple of Quaaludes, stole a car, crashed the car. The police came. I stole the police car and I went back to prison. So that was the last time I drank. So I don't drink socially anymore.
Yeah, I don't think there's such a thing for you, my friend. You go from having a couple of beer to stealing a police car. That's a pretty good indication. So what finally did it for you then? I mean, like, you went back to jail. Like, when was the last time that Ron used substances? What brought that around?
Well, the twins, my twin daughters were born while I was in jail that time. I got out, stayed clean again, relapsed for a short period of time. And in September 1985, I relapsed and I was on 120 mil of methadone. And it was so painful. With a head full of information from NA and then a gut full of drugs. And every day I was miserable. And I was missing my kids and my ex wouldn't let me see my kids because I was using. And I had a dream. I think I told you I had this dream. It's the craziest dream in the world. First of all, I was watching TV and that crazy space shuttle blew up in America in 1986. And I thought it was a dream and I watched that and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm full of methadone and heroin. The next night I dreamt that I was walking down the beach with my twin daughters. And I told the girl I was using with and she goes, you're an idiot. And the very next night I dreamt I OD'd and I died. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. I'd OD'd and I was going to wherever you go when you're dying. And because of our belief system, our teachings, our doctrines, I'm going upwards. I can feel myself going upwards and I'm trying to justify my life. The shootings, the stealings, the prisons, the robbing, the harm. And I got to wherever you go. And I said to this guy, look, everybody I shot was a gangster. It was a criminal world. I'm justifying. He was just smiling. And he was just so peaceful. He's sitting there. And I finished my whole bullshit spool. And he smiled and he said, you don't get it, do you, Ron? And I remember that cold feeling of fear. He said, you committed the greatest sin known to man. And I knew I was in trouble. And I was like, and he just looked at me and said, you wasted the gift of life. So all the shooting and all the crime and all the other bullshit was irrelevant. That wasn't the crime. The crime was I wasted the gift of life. That my higher power had put me on this earth for a reason. And I'd wasted it. So I went home I woke up that morning. I said to the girl, I'm going to detox. And she said, we go to the doctor. I went to the doctor. He said, it'll take me 12 months to bring you off 120 milladone. And I said, I'm not doing it. I'm going to cold turkey. So on the 3rd of the 3rd, 1986, was the last time I put a chemical in my body. And I just cold turkeyed off 120 milladone. Went to lots of 12-step meetings. I've had the same sponsor now for 37 and a half years. I haven't had a chemical for 37 and a half years. I started carrying the message of recovery to everybody who would listen. And I got jobs in rehabs, and that wasn't really my cup of tea because it was too structured and I tried to put everybody under the same hat. Yeah. And this disease is different to everybody. Everybody's different,
Yeah.
And I won't play the game. And
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, because you mentioned that before your last relapse there, before you had the dream, you mentioned you had a head full of NA. Now, were you buying into the program before you relapsed, or was this still like compliance just to make other people happy?
No, I bought into it because I had 30 months clean time up when I relapsed last time, but I was still a criminal. So I had I had the black wolf and the white wolf. But when I say I'm a criminal, I'm not committing a crime every day. I'm organised crime. I'm back into recovery, so now I'm thinking again.
Yeah.
So it might take you 6 months to do a crime, then it might take you 1 week to get rid of the proceeds of that crime. Then you go back to NA for a year, 2 years, and then you'd commit the crime again. And it was really funny because I would stop going to NA meetings for nearly 2 months before I committed the crime so that I could let myself go crazy.
What?
Because if I don't do meetings, I don't work the steps, and I don't talk to my sponsor, I become crazy. And I start getting detached from my emotions, and I can become cold again.
So I can get on an airplane and fly.
So I can pull off the crime, yeah. I couldn't do it when I was in recovery. So I had to let myself go crazy. Yeah, so it was working the program against the program.
Yeah, no kidding. So what was your first?
Yes.
What was your first year like then? Like after you relapsed, you came back into recovery. Tell us about your first year. Like sometimes people, you get like a pink cloud. Other times the trauma really slaps you in the face. And after the life that you've lived and like being conditioned for so long to think a certain way, I mean, were you still like, you'd see the cops and you'd still hate them? You'd see a bank, you'd still want to rob it. Like, what was it like for you?
Yep. 100%. It was like that for a long time. As I said, as I haven't said, but at 16 years clean and sober, I got arrested for importation of cocaine, and got sentenced to 18 years jail. That was hectic. I had a beautiful wife who was American. I had a beautiful little girl who was 6 years of age, who I still adore today. She's now 28. And I lived in a multi-million-dollar mansion. I was known as Ron the Jeweler because I had a jewelry company, and I was a property developer, and I've always been successful. I've always worked hard, and I always drove the nice cars, and I've always had the beautiful life. But
so why the crime?
It's complicated. What happened was I had a friend come to me who was a friend for a long time, a guy that we'd done a lot of crime together. He came to me, he told me he wasn't using, and he told me that he made a big mistake and that he'd lost 30 kilos of cocaine in Argentina.
Damn.
And that he owed the cartel money.
That is a big mistake.
And he came to me and he said, please, brother. And I still remember it like it's yesterday, mate. It was in end of 2000 it was, and I was building a big 2-story mansion on the water. And I was standing there and I'm watching the house get built, and I said, man, I don't need this anymore, brother. He said, brother, please help me. Just come to Brazil and tell the people over there that you're going to back me, and they'll give me another 30 and I'll sell it. And he owed me money too, the guy. I'd lent him money. So there was a financial gain in it. I'm not a victim. There was a financial gain, but my real motivation was this bullshit loyalty. The lie of crime, that we're buddies, we're brothers. I'd do it for you, man. So I got involved. I went to Brazil, told him, give him another 30. I'll cover it, it's all good. And then, unbeknownst to me, he stuffed it up. So me being me, I took control. I got back involved and said, okay, send it to Bali. We'll get it back to Australia. And all the time I didn't know that he was under surveillance. So in 2002, I should say, my world stopped. I get pulled over by the tactical response group, the full SWAT team, machine guns, lasers. You're under arrest for conspiracy to import cocaine into Australia. I'm thinking, I got lots of money. I'll pay the good lawyers. I'm connected. We'll work this shit out, I'm still not worried. I'm still an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. Still thinking I got control. I got this shit, I'm a multi-millionaire.
Were you working this might be a dumb question, but were you working a program like when all this started to go down?
Yeah, I was again.
So you had some sanity.
Yeah. But I also had ego, massive ego. I thought I was smarter than the system. And but the truth of the matter is there was 3 phone calls. See, technology. I didn't keep up with technology. Technology. I had a phone call after all this was 3/4 of the way through. I had a phone call from the guy in Brazil, and he said to me, Pintaro. He said, I'm trying to contact, I won't say the guy's name, so-and-so. And I told him, I said, mucho difícil, don't call me. You know, in other words, I spoke to him in Portuguese. I said, it's too difficult. Don't talk to me. You shouldn't even have my effing number. Piss off. So I hang up on him. He rings this guy, my buddy. He says, I just rang Pintado. He's really pissed off. My buddy rings me and goes, oh, man, Claudio just rang me from Brazil. He said he's so sorry. Those 3 phone calls made me a guy called Pintado. Pintado means painted man. And the jury heard that and said, you're guilty, because there was many conversations that I weren't part of talking about Pintado. You know, Pintado's guaranteed it. Pintado's the boss. Pintado won't let you down. He's never let us down before.
So it wasn't even you then?
No.
Huh.
No. But you know what, buddy? I'm not a victim. I got away with lots of stuff.
I was going to say, like, maybe you think maybe karma had something to do with this?
Yeah. I believe my higher power, he knew I needed some sort of spiritual awakening and a rude awakening, because I was heading nowhere, man. I was going to lose that marriage anyway. I was unfaithful. I was just a gangster, just a bullshit lie of crime. You know, because when you live in that world, it's normal to have a mistress or many. It's normal to carry a gun. I carried a gun to meetings for the first 10 years.
Really?
Yeah, I carried a shoulder holster and a gun to meetings for 10 years. Just because I got clean didn't mean that the other people that I'd shot earlier on got clean and they'd forgiven me. So I was still full of fear and anxiety and crap. Today I don't carry a gun, you know. Today I own guns, but I don't carry one. The only time I carry a gun is when I'm going to a range or going shooting, going hunting. But so I went to jail. My wife left me, went back to America. The Department of, like the prisons, they didn't like me at first. Then they realised that I was the recovery guy, and they started giving me a lot more freedom, a lot of freedom. I started getting NA literature and AA literature sent into the prison. We started getting people coming doing H&I. So
what's H&I? For anyone who doesn't know, what's H&I?
Hospital and institution, NA meetings, AA meetings, people coming in and telling people, hey, there's another way, we can fight freedom from active addiction. So all of a sudden now I've got this freedom, like unbelievable freedom in the system, in the prison system. And it was that much that one prison in particular, it's a privately owned prison, wanted me to come there to help them. They wanted to set up a rehab in the prison. So they transferred me. I did 8 years straight in maximum security prison. And the last 3 years, they sent me to a prison called Relapse, which was owned by a company called Serco. Serco is a big English company, $1 billion company that runs, prisons and trains and all that shit. And but I think the general manager must have had a family member who was an addict, because he just believed in recovery.
Yeah.
And he's like, I've heard good stuff about you, Ronnie. How can we set up a prison? How can we set up a rehab in the prison? And I said, you have to give me a unit completely detached from the rest of the jail. No contact.
Yeah.
We have our contact visits away from the jail. The prison officers there have to be handpicked. They can't be people that need money that are going to smuggle drugs in. The council of women that came in, which was a bummer, because they brought council of women in, and of course, within 12 months, the council of women were all in love with one of the crims, and they were all having affairs.
Was it you? Were they in love with you?
No way. No,
come on.
way.
You can tell us. This is Hard Knox Talks. Come on.
No. I know the ladies listening, but no, I wouldn't give them the pleasure of my satisfaction, because it was still me. I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't do it to myself either, because I would betray my principles. And I've become so strongly moralized principle that what I say is what I do. And I won't break that for anybody. I was like that as a criminal too. I was very strong. So as people got to know, when you get clean, you don't change a lot. All you do is put them into positive actions. My obsessive compulsiveness is still the same.
That is absolutely true what you just said there, and I've said that so many times myself. Like I just pointed that desire to feel better in a productive direction.
Yep.
And like, man, like
100%.
and when you put a meaning, and when you put fulfillment or an opportunity to be fulfilled into someone in recovery's life, like you stay out of their way. You don't
100%, man.
They will run you over.
I have purpose.
Yeah.
I have purpose in my life, and I'm here to serve. You've got to serve somebody, whether it's the devil or whether it's the Lord. You've got to serve somebody. Because if you're not serving somebody, you're lost. If you haven't got a purpose, you're lost. If you haven't got a direction, you're going nowhere. If you haven't got a destination, you're still going nowhere. So my destination today is to leave a legacy in this world of a guy who came from nothing and became something. What did he become? Himself. Which is the greatest gift I can give to me.
So where did the rubber really hit the road for you then? Like you became very involved in the program. Like, was there any aha moments? Like, was there any specific step or any specific literature or anything that really spoke to you?
Yeah. The therapeutic value of one addict helping another is without parallel. That is my favorite quote in everything I've ever heard. I had an old guy who used to come and visit me in prison. This guy was 80-something years of age. He was 64 years sober. And he used to come and visit me and he'd say to me, two things: get Noel's not for pussies, kid, and recovery is about acceptance. You say to me all the time, recovery is about acceptance. He said, if you accept the fact that you can never take a chemical and have a good life, you've got this beat. If you accept that you're allergic to chemicals, you've got this beat. If you think you can have one, you just got beat. And he was an old boxer, so we used to always talk about getting beat and winning, because in boxing there's no second prize. You're the winner or the loser. So we used to always talk in those terms with me. You say, you cannot give up, son. You've got to keep your hands up and you've got to keep fighting. He said, the one who wins is the one who's got the most tenacity and the one that doesn't give up. So today I don't give up, ever. And I'm more excited about recovery today at 37 and a half years clean than I was at 35 years clean, than I was at 30 years clean, than I was at 20. It gets better. And how many times have you heard that said in the rooms over the years, and you think, if one more person says that, I'm going to smack them,
Oh, lots. And I just said this the other, I think it was last week, I was talking about when I was early in my recovery, I used to hate birthday meetings, because you'd go there and like every single person that would talk would just like say all this nice shit about whoever birthday it was. And I was so busy, like I don't know, maybe you can relate, but like when I was early in recovery, like I was on fire, like with resentment and with whatever, So like I wanted to go and I wanted to like dump my shit all over everyone, and those birthday meetings wouldn't really let me do that. So
yeah, I used to think to myself when I came back from relapse and guys were staying clean, I hope you bust. Sounds horrible what I did. I used to think, I hope you relapse, you arsehole. You got your head up your arse, you're up here spruik and all that bullshit, And then I got to a point where some of the people that I resented most in early recovery helped me the most. Their message was more profound than my buddies were, because I listened to them despite my not liking them. And I started to learn that, wait a minute, we've all got a voice. We've all got to be heard. Whether I like it or whether I don't like it, it's not relevant.
Oh, nothing will piss you off more than the truth. And that's a fact. You can take that to the bank.
I love that. That's why my company's called The Truth About Addiction. And, I do podcasts. And you know something, you'd get it the same thing. I do podcasts with people, then I get all these trolls come on and start saying he's not even clean. And I go, well, who gives a rat's ass? At least he's having a go. He's getting on here and he's doing his best. At least he's showing up.
Yeah.
And who's to say he's not clean? What?
And
you
what
tested
is
his urine?
Yeah.
What is clean?
What is clean? What is clean? Can be a contentious topic. So,
man, yeah.
How did you do the 18 years?
No, I did not. I did 8 years straight.
What was it like?
Security.
Go ahead.
Well, the funny part is, the first time I went to prison, I was a drug addict and everybody hated me. The second time I went to prison, I was clean and everybody hated me. You know what I mean? So I don't sort of seem to fit in anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
I went to prison as a junkie, as a kid, and then I came out and I'm the recovery guy.
Yeah.
And, and I had the gangsters and the gangs come to me in prison and go, oh, man, you're fucking up our turf, This is how we feed our family. We got to sell drugs in jail to feed our family. And my attitude was, man, anyone that wants to use drugs, that's their business. Anyone that wants to stay clean, that's my business. Mm-hmm. You keep your team on that side of the factory, I'll keep my side on this side of the factory. I won't come into your side and try to take your guys you want to use. Don't come on my side and try to take my guys who want to get clean.
What'd they say?
So I'm fairly strong. I'm fairly respected.
Yeah.
And I've got some credibility, people know. Even I only got out 11 years ago. Even at 57 years of age, I still at 55 years of age, I was still teaching people to fight. I was still doing 16 rounds on the bag and boxing. I'm a pretty tenacious guy. I'm not a tough guy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm a tough guy, but what I am is you have to kill me to beat me.
So you
can't scare me.
You carved out turf in prison for recovery.
Yeah, exactly.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy. I love it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I'm the only person in Australia's history
to do that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I've got a little. I don't know where it is. I nearly got an NA convention in prison, man. Yeah, look. Yeah. Living proof. Everything I say, I've got evidence.
Recovery is an inside job. That's that is. Here, I'll put you on full screen.
This is the flyer. Yeah, this is the flyer that we had going. Recovery is an inside job. Then you go down further.
Wow.
Berlin Correctional Centre. Blah blah blah. July 20th, 2010. We're certified JP identification. Further inquiries, please call this number. And what happened was the general manager got moved. The new GM come in and canned the lot.
Oh no! But you got flyers already. It's official after you've got flyers.
Man, that was out there in the streets, and then we had some people from NA going like, "Oh, it's not going through H&I," and I'm like,
"Yeah, those blue flamers,
I've been
man,
around
they'll
this
get
program
you."
for 40. I've been around this program for 42 years. Please don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for a long time. 42 years I've been doing this meeting shit.
Yeah.
I've done my time. I've done my hard yards. I've washed enough ashtrays. I've stacked enough chairs. Don't tell me what to do.
I've stacked enough chairs. Fuck off.
Yeah,
here, let's look at some comments.
Man.
Let's look at some comments.
All right, so first one comes in from Vincent Gutierrez. Thanks for your comment. Says, recovery is about acceptance. Love that.
And our friend Onyx.
Onyx says, loose lips sink ships. The only secret that is safe is the one you keep to yourself.
Ain't that the truth? And she's got one more. Oh, here we go. This is what we were talking about.
Within the anger lies the truth.
Yes. Anger is a secondary emotion, from what I've been told. Yeah.
Yeah. They say hurt's the first.
I like that. So tell us what it was like getting out of prison. Okay, so you're living a life of crime. Well, maybe not necessarily a life of crime. You did some serious crime. You got caught. You went to prison. You found the program.
Yeah.
When you get out, what's the first thing you do?
Man, as I said to you, it's 11 years ago that I got released. On the 30th of the 3rd, 2012, I got released. I get out of prison. My sponsor, a guy that I'd sponsored for many, many years, another guy that I 12-stepped in prison. They both meet, like the three of them meet me at the gate at 6 a.m. The clothes I got on are old clothes, they're 8
dated?
9 years old. Dated, and they gave me one of these things.
Oh, hang on.
An iPhone. They gave me an iPhone.
Okay.
I don't know what an iPhone is. I go to jail in 2002.
Uh-huh.
So when I went to jail, the Nokia Flip was
I was going to say, you had a Nokia.
The Nokia Flip was the drug dealer's choice, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So all of a sudden, they put me on Facebook.
Who put you on Facebook?
Some other shit. One of my buddies.
Uh-huh.
He set up the phone for me. He gives me my phone. I'm on Facebook. It's on Instagram. This phone beeps all night. Beep, 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 beep. And I don't know how to turn it off.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what Google is. I don't know what Facebook is.
Yeah.
And he puts me on a dating site, man, which is the worst thing in the world.
Which one?
So, I can't even remember the name of it now. It wasn't Grindr. But anyway, so he puts me on this dating site that's completely crazy.
Yeah.
And the thing's beeping all night. Within 8 months, I had 5,000 friends.
You didn't even know how to use it.
I spent 8 years in prison. I had 4 visits. Where were those 5,000 friends when I spent the 8 years in prison, man?
Yeah, those weren't your friends.
So I wiped it. I closed that. I closed Facebook down. But it was so hard getting out of prison and coming back into the world. I did 90 meetings in 90 days, the same as a newcomer. People say, why would you do that at 26 years clean? I said, because I was a newcomer.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was drug-free for 26 years, I had no connection. You know, like I didn't have the support systems I needed. I didn't have the mental capacity to understand. I drove into a car park, you know, like an underground car park in a mall.
Yeah.
And I came out to pay. There's nobody in the booth anymore where they used to have the boom gate. You got to pay back at a machine somewhere.
Oh God.
Well,
I still struggle with that. I didn't go to jail at all.
I'm at the boom gate. There's all these cars parked behind me, and I'm pushing the button saying, "Hey man, I can't get out. Where do I pay?" They go, "Oh, you got to go back." I said, "Listen, I'm getting angry by now." I'm saying, you know, when you get out of jail, you're not really well, because you got to live in that. When you go to jail, you've got to put yourself back into. I'm the prisoner. Mm-hmm. I have to survive on a daily basis. I will kill or be killed. Mm-hmm. You don't serve 8 years in a maximum security prison unless you've got some really bad attitude where the vibe is, fuck off, stay away from me, because you may harm me, but I will cut your throat. I will harm you. I will kill you. Yeah. And that's the only way you can survive in prison. So I'm pushing the buzzer. Man, open the boom gate. He's like, "So you have to go back and pay the." I said, "Listen, open the fucking gate. I'm going to drive through your boom gate." Mm-hmm. And whoop, the boom gate shoots over and I drive through. So yeah. I had no understanding of life. I couldn't walk into a shop. This sounds really horrible. I couldn't go and buy my own clothes for over 2 years. I had to get a friend of mine, to take me shopping, because the anxiety was so great to walk into a mall where I couldn't stand it.
I've heard before.
People don't understand that.
We had a guest a little while ago who did 18 years for a DUI. He killed 2 people in a drunk driving accident.
Yeah.
And he said when he got out of prison, the colors of everything was very overwhelming. Like you go into a grocery store and there's colorful pictures on the walls and there's people and all of like the different colors that the people are wearing. And like he's used to like no colors in prison, right? Everyone wears the same thing. And he said that was really that was really overwhelming for him. Was that the same for you?
Same. And everyone's going so fast. You can't cross the road. The car, you got no understanding of time and space. So you're not sure how long it's going to take you to run across the road. Mm-hmm. Because you haven't run across the road in 8 years. Mm-hmm. So these cars look like they're going 500 mile an hour. Mm-hmm. You know, the first 12 months was really difficult. It was. And I was lucky because I had a real lot of good support. Mm-hmm. And I was financially okay. I had loving friends, my NA friends. A guy that I used with is still my best mate today, and he's 40 years clean. So I got out of jail and I went straight to live at his house because my wife had left me, my child had gone back to America, and they'd confiscated my homes and my cars and my boats. They'd taken all that stuff off me. The Proceeds of Crimes Act, the what do they call it? The RICO Act, they call it in America. where they just come and take all your money and say, "Oh well, you're a criminal. We're taking everything." Needs to say that you work. Mate, I've worked my whole life. I still work every day today, and I'm 69. I love work.
Yeah.
And I make good money. I'm very good at what I do. Everything I do, I make money at. I've always been able to make money. You don't survive. Drug addicts are the most
resourceful.
Yeah, that's the word I was thinking of. Resourceful things. I mean, we can get on when we got nothing.
Yeah.
We've burnt every dealer in the whole suburb, yet we can still score.
Yeah.
We can still score. I never went a day without drugs. Never. Even when at the end, when I was at my rock bottom and I was penniless and homeless and I was walking around the street all night with no money, because all my using wasn't glamorous. There's only a very small period that was glamorous.
Yeah, the first 5 minutes are amazing.
Yeah.
And
the rest was just gutted junkie, scraping my ass along the ground, selling people crushed up aspirin as heroin. Yeah, man, give us a 50. Yeah. And I give them a 50, and you see them the next day and they go like, how'd your headache go? Because I didn't care, Yeah. I was so rude, I sold a guy. I seen a guy one day and he come run over to the car window and he's like, "Can you score, Ronnie?" And I'm like, "No." And I was with a girl and I go, "Have you got anything we can give him? Wrap up and pretend it's heroin." She goes, "I've got nothing." So we got a foil and I put tobacco in it, just so it felt like there was something in the foil. And I rolled the foil up and I drove around. I said, "Quick, the cops!" And I gave him the tobacco. It's a horrible story. I'm not boasting about this. Anyway, so I sold him this half a cigarette in foil as heroin. And I seen him the next day and he was like, you fucking ripped me off, man. I said, "Do you want to buy some papers?" What else can I say? What else can I say? Do you want to buy some papers to roll your cigarette up? But that's how bad my addiction got me. I was a low-life scumbag, gutter junkie, man. Yeah. It didn't start like that. I started in a penthouse driving a brand new car, with wearing the gold and the diamonds and all that shit. My using finished in the gutter.
Yeah. And
it stayed there for a long, long, long time. I don't glorify using for 1 minute. I don't glorify crime for 1 minute. Using and prison are both a waste of life.
Yeah. So
the crime that I committed.
What's the biggest lessons you've learned along the way?
There's no shortcuts. There is no shortcuts. You have to have principles in your life. You have to be thorough. You have to be consistent. You must be respectful and honest. You have to be open with your thoughts and your feelings. You have to accept that you need help. And you have to be congruent. Don't ask somebody to do something you're not prepared to do yourself. And they're my 8 demands. I live off those demands. Every client that I work with gets the 8 demands. That's the first thing they do when they start working with me. They work on the 8 demands. That's the whole deal. You've got to do that. That program there is my demands. If you don't work the demands, you can't stay clean. I use those 8 demands to work the 12 steps. Do I believe 12 steps is the only way? No, I don't. I believe they're a bloody good helper and they're a great foundation. Yeah. But there's a lot more to recovery than the 8 demands. I believe in breath.
Oh, man.
I believe in breath work a lot.
So I have just recently, and I know I probably mentioned this to you already, but I have just recently found breath work and it's changing my life. And it's easy for me to get excited about that and say oh, my whole life has changed. It's been 3 days. Okay. So I don't know, but as of today, it has made what I would call profound difference in the way that I feel. It absolutely has.
I highly recommend it. And if you really think about it, because I'm a bit of a sarcastic prick, and I know it doesn't come across like that, but I am sometimes.
No, I would have never thought that.
I say to people, what's the first thing you do when you're born? You breathe in. What's the last thing you do when you die? You breathe out. The secret is to keep a rhythm in between. You've got to breathe. And it's about deep breath, because it's like having, like if you had a tube and you only blew it up a little bit, it's never going to get to its full expansion It's never going to get to what it really needs to do to exercise it.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in breath. I went on a spiritual journey, and, I went to India and done the ashrams. I went to Jerusalem and walked the path of Christ. I went into Buddhism. I've read the Quran. I've read the Bible. And you know what I found out? Everything I'm looking for is in here. Everything I looked for outside of myself was inside of myself. The love, the kindness, the empathy, the compassion, the understanding. But what I have to do is keep this thing up here positive and healthy. Mental health. Mental health to me is addiction. When my mental health is not well, I look for things outside of myself to change the way I feel. When my mental health is good, I don't need anything else. This is the best drug I've ever had.
Yeah.
And no one can cut this shit. You know what I mean? No one can cut this shit. No one can dilute it, man. This is mine. You can't take this off me. My recovery and my tattoos are the only two things I've been able to maintain for life. I used to say that in a sarcastic, smart-ass way before I got arrested last time. You'll never take my tattoos and you'll never take my recovery. And no one's been able to do either. And to me, my recovery is the most important thing in my life, more important than my wife and children.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have my recovery, I'm not a husband and a father.
Yeah.
My recovery has to come first. My mental health has to be healthy so I can be a good dad. Because I was a shit dad when I was using. I was a shit husband when I was using. And using to me is not just about drugs. It's about the way I think, the way I act, and the way I react. It's about being a human being. I'm a human being today, Dan, not a human taking. When I was a drug user, I was a human taking. I just took everything. I took everything for granted, and I took whatever I wanted. I didn't care if you owned it. If it was your girlfriend and I wanted it, I'd just take her. If it was your car and I wanted it, I'd just take it. It's so sad to think that a human being, which I am, can get to a point where he thinks that he's so special that he can do that. That's that's a spiritual disease, man. That's a disease of the spirit where you think that you're more important than someone else. And today, I never want to be that person. I don't want to be a taker. I just find it boring. I find it boring being a taker.
Do the old thoughts ever creep in? Do you ever get triggered anymore?
No, never.
When you were early on, when you were still learning this new way to think and this new way to live, how did you manage those triggers? Like, how did you manage the emotions when, typically you would have acted out in a different way? Like, was there a way that you used that would steer you in a better direction?
Yeah, I follow it through. It sounds funny. The second step, they say, Albert Einstein said it, so all the programs stole it. Making the same mistake and expecting different results is insanity. I'm not insane. Today, I'm not insane. Today, I make sane choices. Today, I don't go and flirt with the girl down the shop because I will act out on it. If I feed that wolf, I will end up by feeding it. I will take it out. If I feed, I want to go and commit crime. Crime was my hardest one to give up because I've done it my whole life. I didn't have to work out that crime was detrimental. Crime was my life.
There was no right and wrong at that point. This was just it.
No.
Like, there was no concept of living a different way.
100%. Yeah. I was taught on my father's knee. The old guy that edited my book, the old guy I said about, that 80-year-old guy that used to come and visit me in jail, he was the town drunk. And at 20-something years of age, he got clean. And he ended up he used to be a newspaper reporter. He ended up becoming the editor-in-chief of a newspaper company and became the mayor of the town. From the town
of the town he was drunk in.
The town he was drunk in, he became the editor-in-chief of the newspaper company, and he became the mayor.
That's crazy.
I was going to try to. He done a little prelude in my book. I love what he wrote. He wrote the story of one man's fight against himself and the world he fought to understand. I'm trying to find where he wrote it. His name is Andy Anderson. It's really ironic too, because AA, Andy Anderson, that's his name. He said, my old man must have known that I was destined for this. Here's what he wrote, introduction. Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser, which was the Prime Minister of Australia, remarked in defence of his government's somewhat tight fiscal economy policy. Life was not meant to be easy. And author Ron Isherwood would probably agree with that spirit of the remark, if not its political truth. Writing from a bitter experience, Mr. Isherwood has laid bare a boyhood, the tough Melbourne waterfront, which inevitably led him to spend almost half his lifetime in Australian prisons and devoted to a crime of violence and crime. Born to a life of crime is not a pretty reading, but it is a warts and all story of a young boy who took the wrong path early in his life and never questioned the course he once was on because it was at the direction that he had learnt on his father's knee. Survival of the fittest and don't get caught. So he wrote that thing there, and that's perfect for my life. I didn't question it. If my dad had been a lawyer, I would have been a Queen's Counsel. If my dad had been a doctor, I would have been a brain surgeon. But my dad was a criminal. My uncle was a criminal. My uncle died with a heart that close to his... I died with a bullet that close to his heart that he carried in his body for 30 years. So they couldn't go to a doctor because he'd been shot. In those days, you go to the doctor with a bullet and you then report it and all that sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah.
End up in jail. So he carried that bullet in his heart for 30 years, you know, that close to his heart that they couldn't remove it. So that was normal.
Where can people find your book?
My book's called, that's my book there. It's called Born into the Lie. Born into the Lie of Crime. I'm all over the shop here. And it's on my website, thetruthaboutaddiction.com.au. And that, if you look at that book, if you can read it, it'll tell you the charges up there on the there. It says, shoot with intent to murder, shop breaking, garage steal, shop breaking, shoot with intent to murder. It used to be so funny. This is actually the original police file. So it said the Justice and the Freedom of Information Act. And the bottom one, shoot with intent to murder again. So that by 1972, I had four shoot with attempted murders, and it was just complete insanity, and it was normal.
Yeah.
To me, that was completely normal. And I hadn't picked up a drug at that stage.
All right, man.
I hadn't even taken a drug at that stage.
I think we'll cap it there. Thank you so much for sharing with us tonight, bringing your experience, strength, and hope. Absolutely. But that's it for now. So we'll let you go. Take care, my friend.
Recovery rocks. Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Donna.
Okay.
Thanks, Rod. Take care.
If you got anything out of tonight's show, please hit that subscribe button. Please give it a like. Please leave us a comment. Join us every Friday morning, every Sunday night, right here on YouTube. That's it for tonight. We'll see you next week. Take care, my friends. Say, this is Hard Knox.